Hi guys, it's Luke from your 50 Shades of Sales podcast. Before each episode, we just wanted to warn our listeners that there may be some swear words or choice language used in any one of our episodes. It's not intentional, we don't mean it to offend, but we wanted to forewarn each of our listeners. Please do enjoy. Hello, welcome to another episode of our 50 Shades of Sales podcast series. For those of you who don't know, this is where we'll be giving you a no-holds-barred and alternative view of the challenging yet rewarding life of a sales development representative. Now, for those of you who do know, welcome back. In this episode, we're taking a slightly different angle, right? We're going to be discussing how critical HR is to a smoothly run company, but in particular, the importance of the HR function in running a successful sales organization, which traditionally is a difficult outfit to manage. Now, joining me to do so is one of my longest serving colleagues, which I'm really excited to have on, the lady who keeps me and all of our Durham Lane staff in check, making sure that we're PG, PC, and all above board. It's the one and only Tracey Wilson. How are we?
Hello, good, thank you.
Excellent. I like that energy already. Now, listen, I'm going to be picking your brains as much as you need to mine as well, because obviously we're coming from two different sides. But I think before we discuss the reasons why a company actually needs an impactful HR department and how you go about building one, I think we'll probably need to talk more about what actual human resources means. Now, I got the definition, as I always do. Apparently, it's a group of people or person, in our case, at a company who manages all things or resources related to its employees. So this includes things like hiring, maintaining a budget, recruiting, managing benefits, ensuring employee satisfaction, implementing a company culture, and training of new hires, which for me falls all into the sales function. Have I missed anything out there?
No, I don't think so. I think it covers an array of things. I think if you ask any different company or HR person, they'll give you a different list. There's fundamentals that you covered there, but I think you can't define HR in a way that people think you can. You can't put it in a box. It's so many different things to so many different people.
Yeah, and I mean, we used to take the piss out of HR. What does it actually do? And you find yourself sometimes struggling to get your voice heard in boardroom sessions, things like that, because people don't really understand exactly what is going on in the background. And self-admittedly, Tracey, when you joined our business or became our HR, when you joined our business at first, HR was outsourced to another business.
Yes.
We did operate a bit of a swashbuckling seat of the pants approach to the job, as well as our people in terms of hiring processes as well. So I just wonder what you believe are the most important things to actually put in place to help build a successful foundation at Durham Lane.
Yeah, I mean, for me, having a homegrown HR function is a really unique thing to us. We haven't had any kind of outside influence as such. We've kind of grown it from organic, me being in the business. Mm-hmm. I think the main thing for me is transparency and understanding. So when I became the face of HR, it was to understand what we needed from a HR function, not necessarily what HR function was. So speaking to employees and finding out what support they needed or what structure they needed. I mean, we didn't have policies that you've alluded to there. We didn't really have a recruitment process. It was kind of come in for an interview. I mean, when I got offered the job, I got offered the job straight in the actual interview, which is a big HR no-no, now that I've learned. So there was loads of things that I think we benefited from having the HR function, but I needed to understand what as a business we needed from it. So like I say, transparency, I think people knowing what HR are doing and why they're there was really important. Otherwise, you're not going to get your employees buy-in. They're just going to think here's another thing that management are doing to kind of nosy in on what we do and what we say and how we do it. I think explaining what policies we have and why we have them and why we need them. But also making it clear that those policies can change. There's no point in having a policy that nobody understands or adheres to, or is impossible to fit into our business or our culture. So it was really important to me and as a management team that we put in place structure for the business that's protected us from a business point of view to make sure that we were legally compliant, but also from my employees' point of view, policies that they're getting behind and believe in, procedures that they'll follow just as part of the course that are easy and they're fitting with their daily routine, they're fitting with their daily job. But also kind of wrapped around all that, a relatable HR function. I think a lot of the time, HR's in a back office and they don't speak to people. You'll send them an email or you'll phone them. Yeah, I'll do that. and it's kind of 2-day waiting period, or here's the SLA. It's impersonal, I think, a lot of the time, HR transactions, because they're generally in a back office somewhere. So for me, it was to get out in front of the company, for them to see me, to see the HR function's face, as it were, and to know where I am if they need me, to be able to contact me by email, by phone, by Teams now, but also come over to my desk, come and see me, say hi, tell me what you need. So that was really important for me.
So is there like a one size fits all for businesses, or do you have to build it inside of the organization itself? Because, you know, not everybody is a sales performance organization as we are. You know, they've got a huge organization and sales is just a small part of it. So I just wonder whether there's one size fits all, or whether you really have to tailor what it is that you're doing.
No, you definitely have to tailor. I think one of the biggest mistakes that a HR function makes is that it's a one size fits all. You can't buy an off the shelf HR function and just plop it into a company. Every company's different. I mean, if you look at obviously financial companies, or companies that are really heavily regulated, their policies and procedures have got to be, you know, so much more robust and so much more legally compliant than the likes of a one-man band who doesn't employ anyone, who only employs a few people. So there's definitely got to be an element of organic growth and organic kind of development from a HR function. I think there's definitely fundamentals that every HR function has to have, and they are a buy off the shelf kind of option as a starting point. But I think as an organisation grows, the HR function has to grow as well. It has to keep up. Otherwise, it just becomes a kind of a bit of a limb.
Yeah, and you know, it was good to see the transformation. It's, you know, of policies that we didn't have, and it was good to actually finally, like, I know my rights, right? Like, you know what I mean? We started to get them within HR function, and I guess, you know, a lot of people don't really look at it like that. And you mentioned mistakes, actually. So what do you believe HR departments generally get wrong, but in particular when it comes to sales teams?
I think it's appearing to be one-sided. So that's either too much for the employee or too much for the company. So I think if you're too much for the company, you create that barrier where anybody, but particularly salespeople, think that they can't come and speak to HR because they feel like their targets are too high, or their KPIs are unrealistic, or they're struggling with their performance, and they don't feel like they can stand up and say, I need some extra support, because they feel like that's going to be a black mark on them. But at the same time, you've got some HR functions that are too much for the employee. So the relationship's a bit blurred. That confidentiality lines are blurred, and you can sometimes give away too much information to employees that shouldn't really have that information. So then that kind of distills the HR function's authority, and everyone's like, that's all right, because such and such is fine. We don't have to like abide by the rules because she'll not say anything or he'll not say anything. And that can obviously undermine everything that you're trying to do as a company.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, again, I'm coming from the sales perspective of things. I think a lot of people kind of see HR as the fluffy kitten side of a business. And sales is very sort of hard driven. You know, it's got a very different image as opposed to HR. So I just wonder how, you know, in general, and how they perceive the differences, whether that has an impact on the way that the two functions actually get along.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to what I said before about being honest and open about what the HR function is. It's not about, it's a lot of the conception is it's tissues and issues. That's a HR kind of thing. And you only go to them if you have a problem or if you're in trouble. And again, for me, it's also a HR function in the sales company is a big mistake that they make, is seeing salespeople as just a number. A lot of salespeople, and as a profession, think that it's a churn. You know, you don't perform, you're out the door.
Yeah.
And that means that salespeople don't tend to maybe put as much into a sales role as they would a different role, because they feel like as soon as they make a mistake, they're out the door, and HR kind of holds their hand and pushes them out. But for me, a HR function in a sales company needs to have a flip side, in that they're a support function for a salesperson. So if they are struggling, they can come to the learning and development side of HR and say, look, I need help with this. I need some more support with these skills. I know I can do the job. I've got the passion. I've got the effort. I'm just not quite connecting the dots. And then you can then support them. But I think a lot of people think, oh, if I go to HR, it's a grass. I'm grassing someone up. Whereas that's not the function at all.
Yeah, snitches get stitches, Tracey, you know what I mean? But, I am part of the L&D function, if you like, right? And, I onboard new starters. I look at the constant development of our staff internally. So how important is a strong learning and development process and culture, for that matter, when it comes to, retention, improvement, and satisfaction of sales staff? Because, traditionally, the attrition rate or turnover rate of salespeople is through the roof. So in terms of learning and development and culture, how much does that go in terms of retaining and improving these members of staff?
In my opinion, it's vital. It touches every single part of an employee journey and a company journey. We employ ambitious graduates, and in a lot of cases, it's their first job. It's their first proper avenue into the life of work and in the professional arena. And for me, I want to give them the best experience that they can, because we have a history of building really good salespeople who have gone on to get sales director jobs in some cases and sales management jobs. And that's a legacy that I'm really proud of. And I don't think that's a legacy many sales companies have, because of that attitude, which is normally, or you haven't performed, get out the door. And there's a really high turnover of staff. I think it also plays a part in developing our staff. I mean, you and me are prime examples of coming in as sales executives and moving into different areas. We've been able to hone our skills, you for learning development, me within the HR, and we've managed to get ourselves into leading positions within a small company. I mean, when we started, we had 10, 15 people. We're now 75 strong, and still growing. So it's vital that we keep the people that we've got, but develop them. It's really hard to embed someone into your culture and your company, to get their buy-in, to get them to care about what you're doing, and also want to help and contribute to the growth of that company. It takes a lot of time and energy and effort from a lot of different people. So the more of those people that we can hold on to and progress and move up into the company, who will then train and embed those values into our newer starters, is vital for our growth. So developing our staff is really important. But it also means that our staff will perform better. The better they perform, the more clients we'll keep, the more clients will grow, the more revenue we'll make, the more we can pay people. It just touches on every element of a business, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it does take time, because we hire people with no experience, but therefore we hire people with no bad habits. So we can teach them the Darren Lane way. But sometimes I think that we often are setting people up or giving people the great start that we never had. It's the message from Richard Lane all of the time. It's, I'm giving these salespeople the start that I wish that I'd had, because a lot of sales roles are, this is your job, these are the people that you go after, off you go. Yeah, there's absolutely no direction. And you know what? We've tweaked our onboarding process. That's been a learning process ourselves. And you know what? We aim this whole podcast at SDR level. Now, SDRs typically are sales development representatives. As we've said in the past, they're kind of like the academy players, right? They're cleaning the boots of the more senior people. They're generating leads for the actual salespeople. I think the difficulty is keeping these SDRs challenged, because you can train somebody, you can get them to a point, but I think it usually happens around the 12 to 18 months mark, where they're going, well, what happens next for me? And in terms of the learning and development, you get them to a certain point where you think, well, they think, well, you can't teach me anymore. So it's really, really important that, yes, we keep challenging them, we keep developing them, but if there isn't the next opportunity or move there for them, what would you advise companies to do? Because I know giving them more responsibility is a good thing, but responsibility doesn't pay bills. So I just wonder whether there's any advice that you'd maybe offer companies that are struggling to keep their best people because there's no longer anywhere to go from them.
I probably disagree with what you're saying in terms of there's nowhere else for them to go. I think a lot of people confuse progression and development. I think I've said this for a long time, just in general, not necessarily in our business. Just because you're staying in the same role doesn't mean that you're not developing and getting better at that role. I think a lot of people think that 12 months in a job, yes, I'm definitely ready to move on. But I would challenge them to say, are you really? What is it that you've learned? Are you able? Do you know everything about that role? And I don't think you ever can. That is the whole point of the role evolving and creating new roles within a company. I mean, or ourselves again, yours and my role didn't exist when we joined. And there's probably about 10 or 15 different roles in the company now that have evolved in the last 18 months, 2 years. And that's, to a company, I would just never stop growing. If you've got a person who you want to keep and develop, find a role for them. There will be one. If you're growing, there'll always be a gap. There'll always be a place where, you know what it is, such and such has got a really good skill set in there. I mean, we created a data analyst role. I don't think, if ever 6 months ago we sat down and planned out an org chart, that role probably wouldn't have been on it. But because we had a person who had that skill set, and we thought, you know what it is, that's really helping our data set. We're analysing data for clients, it's winning us projects. Right, okay, so let's dedicate some time and money and resource to finding someone to do that role. That you can never, if you're going to lose somebody, you need and they've got skills you don't want to lose, you need to create something for them, would be my advice.
Yeah,
because there will always be something.
No, that is good as well, because the traditional route for salespeople is get good at being an SDR, then get good at being a BDM, then become the best BDM, and then get given a sales manager's role. And then from a sales manager's role, you might then go a little bit further, a little bit higher. You might go into account management. You might become a sales director. Who knows? But obviously, traditionally, salespeople, or the best salespeople, don't make the best sales managers. But I think in the salesperson's eyes as well, what they think is, well, if there's no manager job available, then where the hell do I go? So yeah, I think you've got to be open with the opportunities that are available, but you've got to keep in constant communication with, because salespeople get fixated on the job at hand, the task at hand, right? I sell things. I am good at selling things. Therefore, why do I not get more money? Yeah. So I don't know whether there's a mistrust, or whether, salespeople might think, well, HR will make sure that I don't get my commission. But why do you think salespeople in general maybe have a mistrust of HR?
I think in a lot of companies it's misused. It's blamed. It's not a lot of management don't want to deliver a nice decision. You're not getting a pay rise. It's because HR have capped the salary bands, or HR have got this policy. I think it's used as a scapegoat, and in a lot of cases it's probably right, in that it's, there's a policy or procedure or whatever that's been in place. But I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's used as a scapegoat, and it's used because it is my job a lot of the time to say, no, you can't do that, or you can't do it this way, you've got to do it that way. But it's how you deliver that message, in my eyes. So like I say, there's a lot of times where I have to say, we can't do that, but a lot of functions go no and move on, whereas I'll say, you can't do that, but we can do this. And I think that's where the difference is in that evolution I was talking about. You've got to evolve with the company. Yes, there'll be a policy in place that worked for us 3-4 years ago, but we've grown a lot. So is it still valid? So a constant kind of review of your policies and procedures is important. But I think, again, a big thing, again, I go back to it, is that they're tucked away. HR aren't normally in amongst the employees. They're sat in an office by themselves because they deal with a lot of confidential information, and that's normally the way they have a lot of confidential conversations. But I loved sitting in with the sales team, in with everyone. I still do. There's confidential things I have to do, but I can go in a room, I can do it from home. There's a lot of different ways around that. And I think a lot of people, to HR, it's a faceless email address, or it's a faceless phone number. So why would you?
I think they maybe think HR are a bit more reactive than proactive. Like they're only there when they're needed.
Well, they're only there if someone's in trouble. Or roll out HR into this meeting because something bad's happened. There's never a kind of, let's have a meeting about the good employee engagement scores that HR have had, or our retention figure is really high. That's not, because that's just it's the job. That's what the function's there for. So I think it does get a bit of a bad rep in a lot of companies, because it is just highlighted when something goes wrong.
I mean, I don't know whether it's a headache for you or an absolute pleasure, but employee engagement and satisfaction, we have to do it, right? As HR, you have to do it as an organization. Is that something that you enjoy doing?
Yes, it is. I mean, sometimes it's hard to hear when it's down, people are unhappy. But I wouldn't really have a job if I didn't do it,
Yeah.
It's the most fundamental measure of a HR function is your employee engagement, because
is that particularly how you're measured as well, is it?
It's definitely a measurement for me. The best companies was a big thing for me. Still is. That's something that we are driving for as a company. And we did really well for our first tryout. I was really proud, but it really opened my eyes to some of the issues that our staff are having, that anonymity helps to bring out, because our staff are really open with me. I'm really proud of that. You sit round where I do, there's people constantly coming up saying, Tracey, can I have a word? And sometimes it's not good, but sometimes it's really good. People just want to have a chat with me about something that they're struggling with, and they want pointed in the right direction. And I love that about my job. I love being able to do that, and I love that we've got a culture that promotes that. There's so many times where I've had new starters come and say, my team leader said it'd be good to have a conversation about this, or such and such has pointed me in your direction, and I love that. That's amazing. But that to me is employee engagement. They're engaged in the company. They want to tell us what's happening with them so we can help and make it better. So there's a lot of things over and above that employee engagement score that I think you need to look at to get the whole package.
Yeah, and I suppose the employee, other than the marketing executives and one or two of the roles that we've got, every one of the scores that comes back is from really a salesperson. So it's, I wonder how much more easier that is to manage or more difficult that is to manage, because typically you've got like the one type salesperson, where if you did it organizationally wide, it might be different for other businesses. I just wonder that might be different, because you made a really good point as well. Instead of not like the mistakes or the mistrust, it's misuse. I only really find out when things are available, when I need them. Because let's be honest, right? No salesperson's going to go trolling through the company handbook, to which it is,
tell me that.
to which is an absolute Bible, right? But all of that Bible holds all of your rights, it holds all of your protections, and it could be the difference between you keeping your job or losing it, right? But I've found out firsthand this year about just what's available to me as an employee, which has helped me absolutely massively and continues to help me now. So I'd encourage every single salesperson to not just look at what commission means to you.
Yep.
And that's the first thing, because that directly affects you. But also just have a look at what's available to you in terms of support, especially if you're working from home, especially if you're going through a shit or a difficult time, which everybody is, struggling to hit targets, struggling to speak to people. The support is there from, yes, your peers, but also HR is there to completely back you up.
100%.
So I know firsthand that it massively helps me as, well, an employee, but as a salesperson. But where do you believe HR make the biggest difference in one, driving sales and growth of an organization?
It's across all avenues. I think the biggest thing is that retention piece. It goes back to, there's a lot of time and effort goes into training and getting our staff up to a point where they're profitable for us. And at the end of the day, that's really important to a company. So to have that, to put all that time and effort in, and for someone to leave within a 6-month period is not great. And a lot of that is down to a lot of the things that you've mentioned there. So employees not really knowing what their rights are, what they can get, what's going on. Commission, yes, really important, but it's also what training and support is available to them. Is it just, we've got the academy where there's got loads of e-learning modules. If someone who's new to the business is struggling a little bit but doesn't want to go to their manager and say, I'm struggling a little bit, because no one does. Nobody wants to put their hand up and go, I don't think I'm doing very well. That's human nature, especially for salespeople, because it's so important to the role that you are able to perform. That's what you're judged on. That's what you're rewarded on. So I think, but being able to just go off and have a look at those modules and say, oh, actually that's clicked, or even having you to go to, or obviously learning and development consultant to go to and say, oh, is there anything that can do extra reading on this? Or have you got 5 minutes to just run through this call that I've just had? Having that open culture is born from a HR function. The HR function is facilitator. They facilitate everyone to be able to do their job well. I think it's like being a control room.
Yeah, I'm learning now that I actually feed into the HR function. I'm literally just learning this on the podcast. In terms of, if I look at learning and development in terms of process and culture, then I'm looking at making the biggest difference in driving the sales and growth of an organization. I'm part of that, right?
100%. It's people. Our commodity is people. They're the thing that allow us to do our job and make money as a company. They're really, really valuable to us. And I think it goes back to even the recruitment piece. If we're not recruiting the right people, we're not going to do the best for our customers because we haven't got the right people in the right place. I think Richard Lane uses the phrase that I use all the time, and I love it. We've got the right people on the bus, but we just need to put them in the right seat, which goes back to looking at your employee skill set and looking at, someone who's not happy in a role. It's not necessarily because they're no good. They're not a good employee. That you don't want to lose the time and energy that you've put in. They've got really good values. Maybe they're just in the wrong role. What can you retrain them to do? Is there something that you can just adjust slightly and put them in a better role? You and me are probably good examples of that as well.
Yeah.
How as an organisation, we're very, very good at spotting people's skill sets and figuring out where they fit.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's good lower level advice. But you're part of boardroom meetings, right?
Yep.
What advice would you give to people in HR, directors, and the like that are struggling to get their voice heard inside of the boardroom? Because you know how much of an influence you can have on driving the growth and sales of a business. I just wonder what challenges you might have faced, but then also what advice you would give in terms of getting your voice heard.
The biggest thing is relating it to the bottom line. The HR function traditionally is looked at as a cost. They don't have I can't say, HR's delivered this number like a sales team can, or a marketing team can. So the biggest thing for me is to relate it back to the bottom line. So the cost of attrition is massive to a company. So if you're bringing in loads of employees but losing loads at the same time, something's wrong with your process, and that is costing your business money. So if you've got an idea that you think will help, tweaking your onboarding, tweaking your recruitment, interview process, your CV, what skills you're looking for, related to the bottom line, is that's all obviously your board want to know, is how it's going to affect their profit margin and how they can do better as a business. So it's also about showing the impact of what they're doing. Employee engagement scores are a really good way to do that. A board obviously are really top level. They deal with really top level issues. But if you can go to them and say, if we improve our employee engagement score by doing this, it means we're going to save X amount on recruitment, or we're going to make X amount on sales people because they're going to stay in the job longer. So they're going to be more profitable for us because they're going to be better at what they do.
Yeah. Not that I didn't have before, but I've got a whole new found respect for HR. No, but because I honestly don't think we understand the cost, not just money, money costs, but like what it costs in terms of hiring and firing people.
Yeah.
In terms of that turnstile culture that lots of sales organizations have, we've got to change that to building a community type culture.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think people understand just what goes into it. And I'm part of the onboarding process, and I take it as a personal hit if somebody was to leave within 6 to 8 weeks because they feel like they haven't been supported, or they haven't got the start that they thought that they wanted, or we haven't been able to give them the foundations to actually do their job. Yep. And I'd be pissed off, quite frankly. And it seems certainly that we're losing less and less people. Would you say?
Oh, definitely in that. I mean, there was times where we were losing quite a high number within 3 months, but that goes back to not having a proper recruitment or onboarding or induction. We didn't really have one. We definitely didn't have one when we started. It was kind of like, welcome, here's everyone, desk, there you go. Yeah. So and that worked for us. I'm not knocking that at all. We were a small company, and you sat in that team and you learned loads by just being immersed in and around your colleagues who were doing the job. And it is a hard job to do. It's a sink or swim job. It's not a job that you can ease people into, because it's hard. You get on the phone, you have to be on the phone straight away. Or I've seen people have that fear. You end up you overthink it so much that when you pick up the phone, you can't speak. You've forgotten what even your name is because you're so panicky about the pitch that you've got to do, and all the things that you've got to remember, and all the pressure, and there's people around, and there's loads of things that go into that. But I think you've touched on it there. That's the onboarding kind of tries and gets rid of all that. At the end of the day, you can make a mistake. You will not be fired for having a bad call. You're human and you're learning, and we build that into our process. We take that stress away from our employees and say, look, we know that you haven't had a sales job before, so this is your embed period. do your best, and it works. I mean, the last few people that we've had in the company over the past few months have absolutely smashed it in their first couple of months. They're doing really, really well. And that's a testament to them.
Thank you.
And yourself, of course.
No, but I mean, I think in the sales job, you get less chances to fuck up than you would in a usual job. But we've seen it firsthand that the people who are right on the cusp of like, you've got no more chances, you're almost out of the door, have stayed with us, been some of our longest employees, have been promoted and have gone on to great things. Yeah. It's crazy what you can do when you give people more than just the one chance. Especially salespeople. Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, you've got to acknowledge an attrition rate in a sales company. That's just it's life. You're not doing it properly if you don't have it, I would argue, because sales isn't for everybody. It is a hard job, and I think nobody knows how hard until you actually do it. We paint a really good picture. We paint a realistic picture, and I'm sure that our employees will attest to that, is that we're honest about what the job is in interview process.
Yeah.
We are blunt, and that does scare people off. We do lose people through the process saying, actually, it's not for me. And that for me means that we're doing it right. Our process is right. But you still get people who come in and it's not what they thought it would be. It's not how they thought it would be. Or they learn something about themselves that says, you know what, I don't want to do it. I don't want to pick up the phone. We've had people who've been with us for over a year and a half and I don't want to do it anymore. Sales isn't what I want to do. But it's got the skills that they've learned have got them to a different place, have got them to a job where they would never have got if they didn't work for us. So I try and take the positive spin on our attrition. And if they've gone on to do something that is in a different field or a better position that we just couldn't offer them, I take that as a win. And I think you've got to look at why you're losing people as opposed to, oh, we're losing people. If it's to do with your management or your culture or your company, then that's bad. You need to fix it. But I think if it's just a natural end to things and people just naturally move on, I think that's a good thing.
I think in one sentence there, you've just sorted HR's headache when it comes to salespeople. So it's a really good, when you're hiring salespeople, set their expectation. When you onboard salespeople, make sure that they're given the best support possible and continued support throughout. Make sure that the learning and development doesn't stop just after the first 6 months, that it's got to keep there. Give them plenty of opportunity. Let them understand exactly what's available outside of the traditional path. Yeah. Make sure employee satisfaction is through the roof and ensure that the culture is built.
Yep.
Pretty simple steps. No, but I mean, it's taken you and this business years and years to achieve it. But I believe that, we're in the best position in terms of salespeople and HR to offer this advice. So hopefully we've managed to give some good advice, answer a couple of questions for a couple of people. But thanks for your time today, Tracey. It's been very insightful.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. And it's a little bit left field in terms of the sales podcast, but we're finding more and more that what you're doing or what HR functions are doing are absolutely driving success. So brilliant. Listen, guys, tune in next time out where we're going to be taking it a little bit back towards the sales route and hopefully have some more exciting things for you. But Tracey, thanks again for your time today.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent. See you guys next week.